Hey, what's up everyone? K-Rob back here with another video. This time we're going to check out a recent video that came across my feed from Stunned by Wrestling. Why John Lauranaitis, Mr. People Power, was one of the most hated men in wrestling. And this has to be not just on screen, but off screen. And if you don't know anything about this man, he is the brother of the late Road Warrior Animal, Joe Lauranaitis. You know, legitimately talented. So we're going to check out and see what Stunned by Wrestling has to say. Give them a like and subscribe to their channel as well. They have great content. And we're moving towards 150 subscribers on this channel. That's the next goal as we continue to build this community. So I appreciate you guys. If you want more wrestling content, let me know what you want to check out. Send me video recommendations if you have any, and share with your friends. So let's go ahead and get into it with also a cameo back here from Miss Moneypenny, my cat, as she cleans herself. Alright, y'all, let's get into it.
John Lauranaitis is one of wrestling's most controversial figures, a man who made a career out of people power, but never earned the respect of the locker room. From his reputation as an out-of-touch WWE executive to allegations of misconduct, John's career has been nothing short of notorious. In this video, we're taking a deeper look into his career to uncover exactly why he was one of the most hated men in wrestling.
All I know is the stories are just awful.
Before he became a
WWE
executive, Johnny Ace was a wrestler, and after a mediocre start, he formed the notoriously...
Oh man, that looks straight out of Skate or Die. The damn dynamic dudes with Shane Douglas before he became the franchise. Listen, in wrestling, especially in the 80s, if Jim Cornette can't get you over, the shit ain't working. That's bad if Corny can't get you over, and he could get a corn dog over.
Awful dynamic dudes tag team alongside Shane Douglas. The gimmick was WCW's attempt to capitalise on the popularity of skateboarding amongst the kids. They were a totally unconvincing pair of skater dudes, complete with skateboards that they couldn't ride and fluorescent outfits that made them look ridiculous. Even with the legendary Jim Cornette as their manager,
in that
the
interview
team was a total disaster.
What am I doing here? This ain't
Cornette was
working.
known for his ability to elevate tag teams, but even he didn't want the stink of the dynamic dudes on him. On his podcast, Jim Ross said, John had no charisma. Watching him wrestle was like eating plain oatmeal. It's just there, nothing to it.
JR.
He had a great smile and good teeth, sure, but he didn't connect with the audience. It was an embarrassing run for John. His time there has only ever been remembered for how totally laughable the dynamic dudes were.
Hey, I wonder what happened to that guy with the red hair, throwing a heart punch. I wonder if he went on to do anything in life.
He joined All Japan Pro Wrestling in 1990, which was a wrestling culture that valued hard-hitting matches and technical ability over gimmicks. So, gone were the skateboards and the fluorescent tights, and John developed a more physical style,
Working
and he
with
carved
Dr.
out a
Death.
career in the tag team division. While he certainly wasn't the star of the show, he did become a reliable performer who could hold his own in the ring. His best moment came in 1998 when he challenged Mitsuharu Misawa for the Triple Crown Heavyweight Championship. This would be the peak of his unremarkable wrestling career. He retired from the ring in June 2000 and came home to the US. While he was away in Japan, John had missed the entire rise of WCW in the mid to late 90s, but he was back to witness the company's downfall, and he did so from the inside. He got the job of head booker, replacing Vince Russo in October 2000.
Bad enough when you gotta replace... Listen, bro, I got so many good ideas. I swear to God, bro, I know everything to get WCW back on track, bro. Okay, maybe I don't, but you know, I tried my best, bro, but it wasn't my fault. It's never my fault.
He prioritised wrestling over convoluted storylines, and he tried to give the title some prestige again, and he was relatively successful at that. But in the end, it was too little too late to save the company, and by March 2001, Vince McMahon had purchased the business. John's contract was also part of the deal, and so he became an employee of the WWF. For the first few years in the company, he worked as a road agent, but it was his time as head of talent relations where he really gained a reputation for being a real piece of shit. The job of head of talent relations in WWE involved looking after the guys on the roster. That included overseeing recruitment, managing the wrestlers, and listening to their concerns while they were on the road. It was Jim Ross, also known to wrestling fans as JR, who was the head of talent relations right up until 2004. He was pivotal in signing wrestlers that would go on to become actual legends in the industry. The Rock, Kurt Angle, John Cena, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, and countless others were...
Yeah, Dave Bautista, Edge, Christian. JR had an incredible eye for talent at that time, and he should get more credit today than just being known as the GOAT, play-by-play man in wrestling. But his ability, his eye for talent and scouting and getting people in the right position at the right time.
Scouted by WWE thanks to JR. And when he wasn't signing new contracts, he was the bridge between the wrestlers and WWE management. Head of talent relations is the type of job that takes a particular kind of person to do, and JR excelled at it. But by 2004, John Lauranaitis was bored of being a road agent, and by all accounts he was one of Vince McMahon's biggest yes men, and now he wanted JR's job. According to JR, John got in Vince's ear and convinced him to give the job of talent relations officer to him. John got bold and didn't try to hide his agenda. Never once did he come to me and say, "You know, JR, I'd like to be in charge of talent relations, and here's why, and here's how I'm qualified," and so forth. But you know, at the same time, I've got to say, well, I helped build this department. All those guys that are on that roster that you're seeing on television, I signed, so I got a vested interest in this deal, so I'm not ready to step away. But I know he kept pushing Vince, and he was younger and he looked good in a suit. So anyhow, Vince sided with John and decided it was time. JR also revealed that Lauranaitis generally treated him badly and belittled him. He also found that the relationship that he had with Vince to be very uncomfortable to witness. He wanted to placate Vince. I wanted to keep Vince happy too. I'm not saying I was different, but I handled it differently. I made decisions without needing to run everything through Vince. He trusted me. It was just an unhealthy situation. Lauranaitis went out of his way to make sure he stayed in front of Vince all the time.
Right up Vince's ass. That makes so much sense.
Every day he was in contact, texts, meetings, you name it. That's not the right way to handle things. But if JR found Lauranaitis frustrating to deal with, that was nothing compared to how Jim Cornette felt. Jim Cornette had set up Ohio Valley Wrestling as WWE.
Oh, are we going to get the thank you, fuck you, bye story? Oh, please tell us that one.
WWE's developmental system. It was Cornette's baby, and JR, while he was head of talent relations, always understood that it wasn't just a developmental system for WWE, it was also a standalone promotion that needed to succeed on its own. JR was always courteous and gave Cornette weeks of notice before calling up his wrestlers to work in WWE, and that allowed Cornette to adjust the storylines and angles and to save disappointment amongst the fans. Lauranaitis, however, didn't afford Cornette the same courtesy.
There it is.
Wrestlers would be called up to the main roster without any warning, leaving Cornette scrambling to rearrange shows at the last minute. Cornette sometimes booked WWE stars for the OVW shows as special attractions, but far too often, those stars wouldn't show up in OVW because Lauranaitis hadn't bothered to inform them about the bookings. In a shoot interview, Jim explained, "We were promoting a show with Randy Orton. Then Tommy Dreamer called to say, Randy's not going to be there."
I can hear this word for word from Corny because I've seen that interview a bunch. It's a classic among many classic Cornette shoots. If you've never watched a Jim Cornette shoot, I just can't recommend him enough. Especially when it comes to certain people that he has an affinity to hate. It's a thing of beauty.
There, he brought a non-refundable vacation for his family. Lauranaitis forgot to tell him about the booking and then tried to blame it on Dreamer.
This damn
He was
guy.
an idiot, a moron and a liar. Nobody liked him. But the final insult came when John fired Jim from his role as head of the developmental territory. By all accounts, the hatred between the two men was mutual, but John wasn't content with just ruining things for Jim. His next move completely destroyed the developmental system that Cornette had worked so hard to create. According to Jim, Lauranaitis hated going up to Ohio because he couldn't stand the cold during the winters, and so he made the decision to move WWE's developmental program from OVW to Florida Championship Wrestling.
So that's some bitch made activity right there. I don't like it. I don't like it here because it's cold. So damn all the work you've put in for roughly a decade building this this development ground for us, this breeding ground to get talent ready and, you know, polish up the stars of the future. No, we're just going to move it here because I like it warmer. Screw everyone else. This is about me. All right.
So John Lauranaitis was the main reason why the WWE developmental program went south and stayed there for a long time, and is a lying sack of shit. He basically fucked the developmental program that had trained John Cena and Randy Orton and Batista and Brock Lesnar and, you know, all those other names. I have nothing good to say about him as a worker or as a businessman or as a human being or as a skateboarder. That opinion seems to be mirrored by many of the people who worked under him on the main WWE roster too. Teddy Long described him as one of the worst people walking the planet. He described how John would be nice to his face, but was actively working to get him fired by going behind his back to Vince McMahon. Tiffany was his on-screen assistant on WWE's ECW brand, and he described how, one night before a show, she confided in him that Lauranaitis had hired her to take over Teddy's job as ECW general manager. The Dudley Boys were very angry at the way John had treated them. After one night stand in 2005, they were ready to sign a new contract. According to Bubba Ray, everything was on the table, just waiting for a signature, but then John pulled the deal at the last minute. In a shoot interview, the boys declined to elaborate on why John stabbed them in the back, calling it a personal matter, but Bubba Ray did say that John had got in Vince's ear, and for some reason, Vince wouldn't put the deal back on the table. Calm as a bitch, he cut our balls off, but we know what happened. He's a cunt with a capital C.
And I can hear Bully saying that verbatim. I can hear all of that. That's crap, so that explains why they wound up in TNA. And you're telling me in 2005 you couldn't find anything creatively for the Dudley Boys to do? The Dudley Boys, that's what I'm gathering here.
There's no shortage of negative stories from the talent who had to answer to him at the time. Paul London, for example, shared an incident from a house show in Australia where he accidentally broke Shane Helms' nose. While he was on the flight back to the US, Paul received several angry voicemails from WWE management instructing him to call Lauranaitis immediately. Paul was incredibly nervous about this phone call after the injury incident in Australia, but he described a situation that when he finally got through to him, Lauranaitis was overly friendly, saying that he just wanted to catch up. Paul believed that this was part of John's strategy to keep the talent on edge, and he saw him do this kind of thing very often.
That's so unhealthy.
He said that by playing these mind games, Lauranaitis created an environment where wrestlers were constantly anxious about their jobs, unsure whether a casual chat might lead to serious consequences. But as time went on, the talent learned that they didn't need to take John seriously. Rene Dupree recalled how Lauranaitis frequently threatened wrestlers, claiming that he had the power to fire them, even though it wasn't true. Rene himself was once told that he'd be terminated if he didn't complete rehab.
Wait a minute. Now, the head of talent relations didn't have the authority to fire people. They were given permission to fire who Vince deemed not worthy of keeping around for various reasons. They were the bad guy with the smoking gun. You never want to be that guy. JR talked about that. It sucks to be that guy, but it comes with the jobs. But no, they never had the authority to fire people.
But when he dropped out, Lauranaitis was powerless to act. Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson really liked him and wouldn't authorise it. So John was all talk, but no action. Rene gave another example involving the Boogeyman. Lauranaitis had told him that he was fired one morning, only for Boogeyman to have a meeting with Vince later the same day, where he not only kept his job, but Vince also gave him a pay rise. But just to give you even further indication of what John was like, not even his brother could trust him.
That's
Joe
bad.
Lauranaitis is better known to fans as Road Warrior Animal.
Rest in peace, Animal.
He came
and
back
Hog.
to WWE in 2005 to form a new version of the Legion of Doom, this time with Heidenreich, of all people. It was a good opportunity for
that.
Animal to make some decent money before retiring from the ring. Animal had helped to create some successful merchandise, but he only ended up getting a tiny 0.5% royalty.
That's so
Joe
screwed up.
couldn't believe how tiny this percentage was, and he asked his brother John to renegotiate, but John dismissed the idea out hand, claiming that all the talent received the same rate. Animal later discovered that this wasn't true, and that all of the other wrestlers on the roster had far better merchandising percentages, and all of them negotiated on their own terms. So this was an outright lie from John to
Imagine your own brother being that grimy to you in a business sense. Like, this dude sucks. Like, on more levels than what we already know.
Joe, and it caused a big rift between the brothers. And here's a shocking admission from Bob Orton's Wikipedia page. As a teenager, Orton was diagnosed with hepatitis C, which showed no apparent symptoms and would have...
Know about this. Bob Orton had Hep C, and he got bloody in the Hell in a Cell match at 2005's Armageddon with Taker and Orton. That you're supposed to get all that stuff cleared before you partake in any type of activity, especially if you're going to bleed in a match. And I believe that match went last. You're the main event. And this is what we're doing?
Eventually no longer recall having the disease. Over 30 years later, in the midst of his feud with his son Randy against The Undertaker, Orton was retested and it was confirmed that he still carried the disease. The Undertaker was furious that he was uninformed of Orton's illness and learned that former head of talent relations John Lauranaitis, who knew of Orton's disease, allowed him to blade, and at one point in the feud, during a Hell in a Cell match at Armageddon 2005, Orton spilled blood directly onto The Undertaker, which could have caused him to contract the disease.
That right there should have been grounds to fire Johnny Ace. You knew that he was carrying Hep C. You allow him to blade in a match and spill blood onto another participant where he could have potentially contracted Hep C. Worst thing y'all do is fire Bob Orton Jr., but you don't fire Johnny Ace for knowingly allowing this to happen.
So that begs the question, was Lauranaitis just an incompetent dumbass, or did he just not care? We also need to mention John's style of recruiting new talent. He put an ad out for guys who were over 6 foot and 250 pounds who had no experience in the wrestling business, which might explain why they ended up signing a load of useless meatheads on the roster in the 2000s.
Hey, now we're not going to knock Chris Masters whatsoever. Dude's still working. Shout out to Chris Adonis. But he was young and he was inexperienced from, being a teenager watching him. The masterpiece, yeah, he looked like $1,000,000. The entrance was great. The Master Lock Challenge was over. But, you could tell, even as a teen, dude was inexperienced. But we're not going to knock him. Luther Reigns, Mason Ryan, the Batista lookalike, which I believe he's still working. And shout out to him too. But some of these dudes, Heidenreich. Heidenreich?
And when it came to signing the women, talent went out the window
never mattered.
entirely. Instead of hiring competent, upcoming female wrestlers, he hired a bunch of swimsuit models with no prior interest in WWE, and that's why we had to suffer through a divas roster filled with the likes of Kelly Kelly and Eva Marie. He also insulted AJ Lee, one of the few decent women's wrestlers on the roster at the time. He allegedly told AJ that her looks would hold her back in her career because men wouldn't want to watch her. It's incredible how incompetent this man was.
I really wish you would have the balls to say that to that woman's husband now.
At his job. There seems to be endless negative stories about him from those who had to endure working underneath him in WWE. But now we can be thankful that he's gone from the company. And what's been alleged about him recently is far more horrific than the job he did as head of talent relations. In January 2024, former WWE employee Janelle Grant filed a federal lawsuit. Grant alleges that McMahon coerced her into a sexual relationship in order to keep her job, and that both McMahon and Lauranaitis engaged in sexually abusive behaviour towards her during her tenure in the company from 2019 to 2022. We're yet to see how all of this is going to play out, but either way, John's garbage career in wrestling is over.
And thank goodness for that, because, we were hurting bad for a long time with that guy in charge. Not on TV, but also behind the scenes with talent relations. Johnny Ace absolutely sucked. Again, he once hired the wrong one-legged wrestler in 2003. They were working an angle with Vince, and I believe it was Hogan still doing the Mr. America thing. And he wound up hiring the wrong one-legged wrestler. I want to let that seep in for y'all for just a little bit. Again, shout out to the channel Stunned by Wrestling. Go ahead and that video has a like from me. Give them a like as well. Give them a subscribe also. And also give me a subscribe. We really appreciate it here. Road to 150 subscribers on the channel as we are continuing to build. We not just do wrestling here. We do gaming videos here. And also occasional appearances and cameos from my cats, as in the back you see right there. So I want to give a big thank you to everyone who checks out this video. Like, comment, subscribe. My name is K-Rob. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, peace.